a person actually wrote this that works at ESPN. This is the closest thing ESPN has ever published that is an admission that Caitlin Clark is the driving force, the main reason for why the WNBA is where it's at. And that melted my heart.
Did you catch that? ESPN just published something they've been avoiding for 2.5 years. Right there in black and white, Caitlin Clark was the driving force of the sport's rise in popularity. Not one of the driving forces. Not contributed to. The driving force from the same network that spent months crafting narratives about how everyone deserves credit, how it's a team effort, how we shouldn't focus on one player. And yet here we are. So what changed? Why?
Carried over to the WNBA, which saw a historic year in attendance, viewership, and other key metrics. While Clark was the driving force of the sport's rise in popularity, other college stars such as fellow draftee Angel Reese and more recently Paige Beckers also brought significant followings to the WNBA. They had to mention them. They had to. It's part of the quota. You can't hold it against them. It's just part of their quota. Over time, it became clear Clark was...
Notice how even in their admission, they couldn't help themselves. They had to add the qualifier. Angel Reese, Paige Beckers. They had to get those names in there. It's like they're constitutionally incapable of giving Clark full credit without immediately pivoting to someone else. This is the pattern we've seen all season. Every achievement gets an asterisk. Every record comes with a "but what about?" And that line about the quota, that's not cynicism, that's pattern recognition.
A sort of rising tide that helped lift all boats. Driving force of the sport's rise. Clear Clark was the rising tide that lift all boats. Good for you, ESPN. It only took 2.5 years. People had to do some digging and diving and some searching and lifting up a rug, check and see if it's underneath the rug. People had to search high and low for this. But it's about time it came out. Now, ESPN put out an article.
Here's what makes this significant. ESPN published an entire article titled WNBA CBA Negotiations at an Impasse. 11 things that got us to this point. 11 things. 11 separate factors they identified as contributing to this labor standoff. And you know what the real story is? One thing, one person. Because without Caitlin Clark, there is no impasse. Without Clark, the players accept whatever the owners offer, just like they've done for 25 years. The leverage the players think they have right now, that's Clark leverage. The ratings they're pointing to, Clark ratings. The attendance records, Clark. The sponsorship money flooding in, all Clark.
Just say, Caitlin Clark drafted into the WNBA. That's it. Why are we at this impasse? Well, because Caitlin Clark's in the WNBA. That's why we're at this impasse. If Caitlin Clark wasn't here, the ladies would have accepted whatever crumbs the owners threw their way. If Caitlin Clark wasn't here, the owners would have said, "Yeah, you want more money? All right, we'll go from $450 to $510. Here you go." Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate that, and we still get our housing and cars and IKEA and Walmart gift cards to get our stuff. Yeah, you guys get all that. Oh, sweet deal. Where do I sign? They love it. But now Caitlin Clark's here. Now they got a battery in their back.
Think about what was happening before April 2024. The WNBA was losing money every single year. Attendance was stagnant. Viewership was so low that games weren't even consistently televised. Players were making base salaries around $70,000 and supplementing that income by playing overseas. And you know what? Everyone accepted it. The owners knew the economics. The players understood the reality. There was no impasse because there was no leverage. Then Clark gets drafted. Suddenly the Indiana Fever are selling out arenas. Games are drawing 3 million viewers. Merchandise is flying off shelves. And now the players think they can demand NBA-level revenue sharing. That's not confidence in the league's growth. That's Clark-specific leverage being applied to league-wide negotiations.
They think they can start flexing their muscles. Yeah, you see how many people watch these games? You see how many people watch these games? We want more money. Look at how much we're bringing to the league. Well, that's Caitlin Clark bringing it to the league. Caitlin Clark drafted into the WNBA. Spotlight intensifies. Caitlin Clark puts the batteries in the players' back, making them believe that they have power that they absolutely do not wield. Oh, you guys aren't seeing that in the paragraph? Yeah, I figured I would just summarize it for you and give you the truth of the matter. Moving along. USA Today puts out an article.
But here's where it gets complicated. The players are negotiating as if this surge is permanent and universal, as if every team is seeing these benefits equally. They're not. The Fever saw attendance increase by over 400% this season. Meanwhile, teams without Clark on the schedule, minimal growth. Some even saw decreases compared to previous years. TV ratings for Fever games averaged 1.8 million viewers. Games without Clark? Back down to the 400,000 range we saw in 2023. So when the Players Union demands that all players benefit equally from this revenue surge, they're essentially asking for Clark's value to be redistributed across the entire league. And you can understand why the owners are hesitant, because they're looking at the same data we are. They know what happens if Clark gets injured. They know what happens when she's not playing. The ratings prove it. The attendance proves it. The merchandise sales prove it.
With Kathy during year 1 of Unrivaled, and not only never told Caitlin, but only brought it up for clicks and exposure during her presser months later. 2, Unrivaled ratings sucking in year 2, and someone getting USA Today to drop an article teasing Caitlin's playing so her fans will start watching, like Unrivaled did leading up to all years, last year's first season. Pardon me. That genius writer does the article and can't spell Caitlin's last name. Clark did play at Team USA, so before that Clark did play at Team USA, I clicked to the article. It pretty much said, no, she's not playing in Unrivaled. She was injured. She's recovering. She chose something else. So they did a whole article to give us a 10.
Now let's talk about USA Today. They published an article with the headline, "Is Caitlin Clark playing in Unrivaled?" Just that. A whole article asking a question. And here's the thing. Unrivaled already started. The season is underway. The answer is obviously no. Everyone knows the answer is no. So why publish the article? Click revenue. That's it. They're banking on Clark's name driving traffic to an article that provides zero new information. And notice the misspelling in the body text. They wrote Clack instead of Clark. This is USA Today, not some random blog. They have editors. They have proofreaders. Multiple people reviewed this before publication. And nobody caught it, or maybe they did catch it and published anyway. Because the traffic matters more than the accuracy. This keeps happening. Major outlets consistently misspell her name. They get the details wrong. They publish speculative articles with no sources. And it's always with Clark. You don't see this pattern with other players. Their names are spelled correctly. Their stories are fact-checked. But with Clark, it's like basic journalism standards don't apply. Because the traffic is too valuable to pass up.
Clack said. Now my question is, how many editors does this need to go by? How many reviewers does this need to pass? How many eyeballs see this clear misspell and just say, yeah, just publish it. Yeah, just publish it anyway. Just put it out anyway. Now I wouldn't say this was a big deal, but this seems to be a common occurrence with, the old guard, WNBA themselves. They misspell her name, whether it's the first name, whether it's the last name. They just can never get it right. They spell everybody else's names right, but this just seems to be a pattern when it comes to Caitlin Clark. Very interesting. Like the video, comment, and subscribe. There is some Panini news real quick. I'll just hook you up. Caitlin Clark Chronicled will be available at Panini online store.
And then there's the Unrivaled angle itself. Nafisa Collier mentioned having a conversation with Kathy Engelbert about Clark during year 1 of Unrivaled, but she never told Clark about it. Never reached out. Never made an actual offer. She only brought it up publicly now, during year 2, when Unrivaled's raids are struggling. That's not transparency. That's using Clark's name for publicity without actually involving her in the process. Clark was injured for part of the off-season. She's recovering. She's preparing for Team USA commitments. She made her decision about how to spend her off-season. But Unrivaled is still trying to generate headlines by connecting her name to their league. Even when she's not participating, they're leveraging her for attention. It's the same pattern we see everywhere. Use Clark's name, get the clicks, get the viewers, get the attention. Whether she's actually involved or not becomes secondary.
Part of a 100 card collectible set. And you got the whole Caitlin Clark set right there. As you guys all know by now, shout out to John the Liquidator. He did a good job reporting Caitlin Clark's visit to the world headquarters. So salute to you, John Liquidator. Appreciate you. Caitlin Clark via her Instagram story. She's got the Caitlin Clark logo varsity jacket, I believe those are called. I'm not hip. I'm not hip anymore. I believe that's what those called though. She's over here having fun, want me to sign it. She's walking through.
Look at her Nike visit. The video shows something we've seen all season but rarely discussed openly. The level of attention she commands is unprecedented for a WNBA player. People stopping to watch her walk through. Security managing the crowd. Nike rolling out the red carpet treatment with her signature logo on varsity jackets. This is superstar treatment. This is the kind of reception that transcends the sport. And here's what that means for the league. Nike isn't doing this because they believe in women's basketball generally. They're doing it because they believe in Caitlin Clark specifically. Her signature shoe deal is worth more than most WNBA team payrolls. The marketing budget Nike is allocating to her campaign exceeds what they've spent on the entire WNBA in previous years. That's not league growth, that's individual star power. So let's bring this full circle and talk about what ESPN's admission really means. Because this isn't just about finally acknowledging Clark's impact. This is about the fundamental tension at the heart of the WNBA's current moment. For 2.5 years, we've watched a coordinated effort to downplay Clark's individual impact. Every record came with context about team success. Every achievement was framed as part of a larger movement. Every discussion about her value was immediately redirected to talk about other players. The narrative was clear. This isn't about one person. This is about the entire league rising together. But the data never supported that narrative. The rating spike wasn't gradual across all games. It was immediate and Clark-specific. When she played, millions watched. When she didn't, viewership dropped back to 2023 levels. The attendance surge wasn't league-wide. It was concentrated in arenas where the Fever were playing. The merchandise boom wasn't distributed across all players. It was overwhelmingly Clark-driven. ESPN knew this. They had the numbers. Their own broadcasts proved it every single week. Games with Clark drew 5 times the viewership of games without her. But they couldn't say it. Because saying it out loud creates problems. It undermines the collective narrative. It exposes the uncomfortable reality that the WNBA's growth is dependent on one player rather than being sustainable league-wide progress. Now we're seeing the consequences of that avoidance. The players' union is negotiating based on the belief that the league has fundamentally changed, that the revenue surge is permanent and universal, that they deserve NBA-style revenue sharing, because they're generating NBA-level interest. But the owners are looking at the same situation and seeing something different. They're seeing one player generating unprecedented value, and a bunch of other players trying to claim credit for it. Think about the position this puts everyone in. The owners can't say publicly that Clark is the only reason for the revenue surge, because that would alienate every other player and create a toxic environment. The players can't acknowledge that their leverage is entirely dependent on one teammate, because that undermines their collective bargaining position. And Clark herself can't point out that she's generating the vast majority of the value, because that would make her look selfish and damage her relationships with teammates. So instead, everyone pretends. The league pretends this is sustainable growth. The players pretend they all contributed equally. The media pretends there isn't one obvious explanation for everything. And ESPN publishes articles with 11 different factors when there's really only one. But here's what happens next. The CBA negotiations are going to force everyone to confront this reality, because the owners aren't going to agree to revenue sharing based on inflated numbers driven by one player. They're going to want protections. They're going to want to see sustained growth beyond Clark. They're going to demand proof that this isn't just a temporary surge. And the players? They're going to have to decide whether to accept a deal that reflects the actual economics of the league, or hold out for something better and risk losing the momentum entirely. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If the season gets delayed, if games get canceled, if there's a prolonged labor dispute, the only person who definitely comes out fine is Caitlin Clark. She's got her Nike deal. She's got her endorsements. She's got options. Everyone else? They need the WNBA more than the WNBA needs them. That's why ESPN's admission matters. Because it's the first crack in the narrative. It's the first major outlet, saying out loud what everyone has known privately for months. Caitlin Clark is the driving force. Not one of several driving forces. Not a contributing factor among many. The driving force. Everything else is downstream from that. Watch how the conversation shifts now. Watch how other outlets start being more honest about the numbers. Watch how the CBA negotiations change once everyone acknowledges the reality. Because you can't build a sustainable business model on a foundation of denial. At some point you have to look at the data and accept what it's telling you. The question isn't whether Clark is the reason for the WNBA's surge. ESPN just admitted she is. The question is what happens when that becomes the universally accepted reality. Does the league restructure around that truth? Do they create a tier system where star players are compensated differently? Do they accept that basketball, like every other sport, is driven by individual superstars rather than collective equality? Or do they keep pretending? Keep crafting narratives about how everyone deserves credit? Keep publishing articles with 11 factors when there's really one? Because that strategy has an expiration date, and we might be reaching it. So here's what I want to know. Do you think ESPN's admission changes anything? Or is this just one article that everyone will ignore by next week? Does acknowledging Clark's impact force the league to restructure how they think about player value? Or do we just keep pretending that this surge is sustainable without her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think I'm wrong about any of this, tell me, because this conversation matters. The WNBA is at a crossroads. The decisions made in the next few months are going to determine whether this growth is real or whether we're just witnessing a temporary spike that disappears the moment Clark retires. Hit subscribe if you want more honest analysis about what's actually happening in the WNBA. Because clearly we need more people willing to say what the data shows, even when it's uncomfortable.